And we're back here, Fantasy Author's Handbook. I'm Phil. This is number 12 in the 100 book challenge. Writing Past Dark by Bonnie Friedman. The subtitle is Envy, Fear, Distraction, and Other Dilemmas in the Writer's Life. This was our May 2025 Fantasy Author's Handbook Group Reads group. Group read, I know that's always hard to say, but I said it, for May. Right? This is one of those books on writing that I've seen recommended in different places for a long time. I found a copy and it was sort of sitting on my shelf back here that you can see here. This stack here is books on the art and craft of writing that I have yet to read. It was on there. So I nominated this one. This was the one that got the votes and read it. I liked it? Question mark. This one, if you're looking for a real kind of how-to, actionable craft advice, where to put the commas and things like that, this is not it. This is much more like what is really my favorite book on the art and craft of writing, Take Joy by Jane Yolen, which you'll see here. That was the first of our Fantasy Authors Handbook group reads. That remains my favorite. This one, I got it, right? And I pulled a lot of stuff out of here, and you will see me read from it, and we'll sort of pass that stuff on to you. And it definitely inspired a blog post, which you'll see a link to here too as well, down in the description at least, in terms of sort of mining your real life for characters, right? Basing characters on people that you know, or even if you're writing memoir or narrative nonfiction, that kind of thing, actually just talking about the people in your life, that I thought was really interesting. And there's more in here that's interesting. This is really more, though, along the lines of Take Joy, where it's about sort of the gestalt of being a writer, right? The writing headspace, the writing life. And this one, very much like Stephen King's On Writing, is very autobiographical. This is not an attempt to say, hey, all of us authors, we all do this, we all think this, we all need to remember that, so on. This is really her personal story. And then, of course, that's dependent on how does this match up to you. Didn't always match up to me, right? But that's actually the strength of it, or should be the strength of it anyway, that, I know what I do. I know myself, right? We're reading these to get a sense of what other people are doing, what other people are going through, and to get ideas in that can help us. So, this was like a collection of essays rather than chapters about the feeling of what it's like to write. And, and so, of course, I'm always reading books like this with a pen handy to make notes. I thought this was interesting. I'll just go ahead and read this. When writing is going well, it is not like pushing. It's like falling. You fall the way you do in dreams. You fall and fall. There is that same disorientation and breathlessness and speed and tension. You fall past the ground floor, past the sub-basement, past the creatures that live in the center of the earth. Big black lobster-like figures working machines you glimpse as you fall toward blue sky. What joy! And yet it's scary. For all its vast pleasure, it's scary because falling stops. Words end, and it is always just you again at your desk in your room, judgment already beginning. Yeah. So this is the kind of stuff that you will find in here, really deeply into the feeling. And again, this one, I kind of felt simpatico with that, but it's sort of the feeling of writing, the feeling of being a writer, the feeling of having written, of trying to write, and so on, that, I think a lot of us will attune to. And, this was something that, I think was part of that blog post about writing about people or mining the people in your life for characters. She said, in writing about the living, aren't we trying to access something living in us? Living incognito, in turn, resisted, half-formed, sharp as a fang? So anyway, I'll skip through that essay so you'll see the rest of that in that post, which I do recommend reading because this is really about, we always talk about, well, I don't, but you always heard talked about write what you know, write what you know, write what you know. I've always really thought it's more like write what you feel. But in this case, what I was writing there in the blog post, again, inspired by this essay here in Writing Past Dark, was write who you know, right? So that it isn't just, sort of your experience, but it's your experience of everything and everybody around you, yeah? And here on this page here in the essay, the paraffin density of wax wings. So you can see the sort of the way she writes is very hyper metaphorical, right? She definitely uses a lot of words, but this is her essay about attending writing school. And in the margins here, I wrote, I believe this to be true. We should be told write fast, write close to the bone, write for 10 hours straight until you're not thinking in words anymore, but in colors and smells and waves of memory. Write what you care about. Don't write one more word you don't care about. Don't waste any more of your life on what does not matter to you. Write only what matters to you. Choose those scenes, those dialogues. Get messy. Before you get neat, get very, very messy. Write until you are more alive than you have ever been before. Yeah. Again, in my own writing, I've called that write in ecstasy, revise in intent, right? So just get it out there, right? Get it out on the page. Just make it happen. Because who cares if it's good yet, right? There's time for good later. But give yourself something to work with. Yes? Okay, can I be honest here about this stuff? At the end of this one essay here, the wild yellow circling beast I wrote, I honestly have no idea what she's talking about in here. And the subtitle of this is Writing from the Inside. There were parts of this book that I just did not connect to at all. And clearly this entire essay was one of those places. It does not have to be all things for all writers, right? It can just be a glimpse into someone else's experience. And again, I didn't connect with that essay. Will you? There's one way to find out. Get a copy of this and read it. Yeah. And she's in one essay called "The Story's Body." I'm just flipping through this as I go here, right? Because it's not about the memory. Because I'm annotating. I'm annotating. And I've done annotated this. This is called "The Story's Body: How to Get the Meaning In." And you know that I'm a big proponent of meaning. That every story, no matter how kind of broadly drawn it might seem to be, like it's just sword and sorcery fantasy, it's not about anything, it's just guys fighting monsters with magic, it's always going to be about something. You may not even intend it to be about something, but there's a message of some kind in there, right? And, and again, it doesn't have to be some sort of definite political screed, like everyone has to start thinking the way I think, anything like that, but it's going to be about something. Anyway, here I wrote down the word experience because for me, writing fiction is all about the experience, right? That's what point of view is for. We want to go into the story so that we can experience being in this place in this time doing this stuff. Even if that's, some completely invented magical world, some far distant future and so on. Bonnie Friedman says, fiction structures an experience for the reader to live through. That is why its force can be so great. You want your reader to feel a certain way. You want your reader to understand what you have been forced to understand. The insight that eludes words, but that you know in your bones. Give up trying to explain. Fiction must convince our bodies for it to have any chance of convincing our minds. And yet, is the point of our bodies our minds? Were we given shoulders and a chest and legs and feet just so our brains would have a pedestal? The physical pleasures of a novel exist for themselves, are a good in themselves. Okay, then jumping to the essay called Anorexia of Language, Why We Can't Write. This is really her look at writer's block, which she calls the silence. And this essay, honestly, is an exercise in wildly mixed metaphors. It was a little bit tough for me to kind of sort through, but this paragraph in particular here that you'll see that I have called out for myself, I thought was really interesting. To gain the book, one must give up all hope for the book. It is the only way the book can get written. While one writes, one cannot simultaneously be gazing up at a glorious abstract painting of what the book should be, a painting that is all golden glow and admirable wordless heft containing a sense of a book, like a Bible, like your very own Bible penned by you, and at the same time expect to be advancing into the body of this particular earthly book. It won't work. You may gaze and gaze, but you may be sure that when you begin to write, that gorgeous, ineffable volume will not coalesce on the page. Something else will appear. And then you have a choice. You can accept it and get on with your writing, or you can throw it away and pine for the painting. So for me, this is this idea of there's the book, right? The book that you intend. This is everyone who's ever said, I'm going to write the great American novel. I'm going to write the book that's going to change the world, that kind of stuff. As opposed to the book that you actually end up with, which may not be necessarily the great American novel. It may not. It's almost definitely, let's be honest, not going to change the world or anything like that. Or maybe you won't even know if it does 500 years from now when it's discovered somewhere or something. But there's what you're going for and then what you end up with. And the reality is what you end up with, right? So what are you going to do about that? And be ready for that, yeah? That you're just that sort of sitting down and saying, this is going to be perfect, dang it. Let me hold this up closer to the camera there. Do you see the little frowny face that I drew there? I don't always draw little frowny faces in the margin of books. But this one is this essay called Glittering Lush Icons, which is sort of her look at the idea of success, right? And I've written a post here that I'll try to link that, is sort of what does it mean to be successful? What does it mean to write successfully, to be a successful author? And that's going to be personal really for everybody. Yeah. And she more or less says the same thing. But the frowny face says, that she's talking about sort of the people that she knew in writing school and so on, and that she's known throughout her career. And in this case, she says, or the man who remarks with a laugh, two men actually said this to me. I went off to write the great American novel and is now a fatigued editor. Do I look fatigued? It's the lighting. Then she wrote, what do we mean by success? What do we expect it to look like and feel like? Where shall we find the holy chalice, the elusive unicorn, the rose in its tangle of briars, the doe that's left over the hills? The other metaphor, and then the other metaphor, and then 8 to 10 to 15 more other metaphors. This fatigued editor would have said, like, anyway, so is this, have I found inside the May 2025 group read over on our GoodReads group, the perfect book on writing? Nope. But in the same way that Bonnie Friedman said there's the book, right? Am I writing the definitive book on the writer's life? And then there's the book that you end up with, which is her book, which is her story written in her voice. I think it's a success on that level, right? So with positively mixed feelings, because I think it's good to have mixed feelings about books that we read, right? This is not, I haven't signed on to the Writing Past Dark manifesto, right? We're not being asked to, move to the compound or anything. It's okay to take what we want, what works, what strikes us as good advice, as interesting advice, which feels like, wow, I think that too. I felt that too, right? And then leave the rest behind or whatever, right? So, Writing Past Dark, read this, make your own decisions. This was number 12 of my 100 book reading challenge, also our May 2025 group read. That means that on June 1st, when, not if, you join our GoodReads group, and there are links in the description, you will be able to nominate the July book. We read one book every other month and then spend the month in between nominating and then voting for, right? So that's it. Number 12, down 12% of the way through, knocking through books here, doing pretty good. Also very, very busy, very deadline intensive, very deadline crunchy time period. But I will see you soon with another book, right? Book number 13, I'm sure will be finished soon. And join that GoodReads group, read this with us, and I will see you again soon. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.